So when you get this, you're going to read the blue sheet. You actually get a blue dial. So you're going to read the blue sheet. And then you're going to take the little survey. There's like a little 2-page. Got it. There we go. Yeah. There's a little white kind of pre-test thing, not a survey that you want to do. Take the first page and we'll do the second so we got people. There we go. We got more. Yay. Well, that was good. Kind of almost back on track here. All right. Actually, that's some thoughts. Well, you know, it's better for it to have happened today than yesterday because I have credibility.
That's okay.
And I'm also super duper punctual. So never, it's like if I'm even 1 minute, I pause for concern. So, but anyway, I apologize for that. Oh, you know what else too? I forgot to do these yesterday. Everybody gets a perfect. Good.
These are weapons.
They are not weapons. And those are yours. If you like.
Yeah, you keep it. It's like a stress degrader.
Yep, that's what they are, yeah. For some people, this topic is stressful and it can kind of help to have a little stress to play with while you're listening and participating. Or you can follow it later with non. All kinds of ways of thinking with that. There are more colors if people want more colors, yeah. Or the orange is the least popular. That's right. Yeah, that would be an interesting study. There are different your stress relief kind of different colors depending on the season. Yeah. Doing well. A couple years, right? Yeah, right. Wonderful to see you. Perfect. All right, good.
Look at you're ahead of the game from yesterday.
No, I know, no. Like, you know, you can't get the whole package. You only get certain pieces. Right. So it was like a few of us are still working on it was just a little survey that's the note to self, we only give those out after the survey is complete. Oh, they do. Yeah, they use some you're speaking from experience. Yeah. Number 5, is it like a 1 to 10 type of thing? Or how would you rate your knowledge of these 7 following areas? Oh, never mind. Yeah, it's a very small kind of Likert scale, low, medium, high.
And you have that 945.
Yes, facially.
Just so that you are.
Yes. You didn't have any.
No.
Oh, it's like
Children. So I have a.
No, I don't.
Way too many guys.
So, you know, Professor Morgan, oh, he's the dean.
Oh, we've changed that.
I sure want to. I found Yes.
I found some pencils with gadgets on them. Computer, so I should get them. I love them.
Yeah, they're hilarious. Okay, we just about finished. Yesterday's.
Oh, good.
It was all settled and that. Perhaps the change. Okay, you two, do we have to separate? Like that's a major damage. You might have to stop this car and turn around. I think we're all suspicious. So while people are finishing up, let me just say my name is Allison Barton, and I'm the coordinator of the Moore Park College Students Health Center, which how many of you, before I said that, knew we had a health center on campus? Good, so most of you. And it's right across Raider Walk from us, you know, in the admin building where I whatever direct, yeah, that direction is. And we have a lot of services for students, and you all pay to help you get your money's worth, right? You have access to really significant medical services there. We have a doctor, a nurse practitioner, and some nurses. We also have mental health providers too. And students are eligible for 6 free sessions per semester. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows that. You have a little card in your packet that talks about our that talks about our services and how to reach us, and some other really important numbers and things like that on there. So just be aware, we like to have people hang on to those. You can actually detach the little resource number thing and stick it in your wallet if you want to. Everybody should have a QPR packet, right? That has the blue sheet, the white survey, this, and then this little booklet. So I say that because I want to make sure that you're not busy taking notes while I'm talking. Isn't that cool? Like a little note vacation, right? You don't have to take notes because everything we're gonna talk about is in here, right? And I'd rather you pay attention and participate than spend a lot of time making notes. There will be a place where we have lots of local resources, and then if you have a smartphone and you want to, you can take a picture of that slide, and then you have those resources available to you too. Right? I'll let you know when that happens. Why are we doing this? So first of all, QPR is suicide prevention training. When you are done with this training, you will be called a gatekeeper. And this does not mean that you're going to turn into a therapist at the end of this, hour, right? It does mean, though, that you're going to be better able to recognize signs of depression and suicide ideation, or the idea that somebody might be thinking about killing themselves. And then get some really good tips about how to prevent that from happening, right? So it's kind of like CPR. And in fact, if you notice QPR, CPR, right? So CPR is for you to be able to recognize when people are not breathing or when their hearts aren't beating anymore, and to do immediate things that are really important to save that person's life, like calling 911, like doing a few little, rescue breathing and that kind of stuff, right? But it's not going to turn you into a healthcare provider, right? That's not its purpose, and that's the same as this. This is question, persuade, and refer. So your job is very short, but very important as a gatekeeper. Okay, does that make sense? So this system or this training was developed by Dr. Paul Quinnett, who was a mental health provider up in the Seattle area, where they have a rather high rate of suicide, depression, that kind of thing. And so it's a good place to sort of try to figure out how to help people the best you can. And so he and his colleagues developed sort of this citizens response to suicide prevention. And this, so welcome to QPR training. If at any time you have any questions, of course, raise your hand and let me know what they are. But the other thing is there's a lot of participation, right? And to get the most out of it, you want to participate. If I ask you questions, please raise your hand and answer them. It's a great way of helping yourself and others in the classroom learn, and it helps me learn to be more clear or to add things to future presentations. So participation is really important. Okie doke. So let's get the show on the road here. Oh, yeah. Yes. Very important. Yeah. Thank you. So the other thing is this is heavy material. And some of you may have had the experience of having thoughts of suicide yourselves, or you may know somebody that did, or you may have experienced suicide of another person, and it's a very upsetting experience for sure, right? And sometimes this kind of presentation can trigger thoughts that are very uncomfortable in people, right? And you may want to just get out of here, which I understand completely. We don't want you to just get out of here, though. We want to help you. We want to maybe talk to you a little bit before you leave. We want to maybe help you get over to the health center if we need to speak to a healthcare provider because of the thoughts and feelings that you're having during this presentation. That's non-profit, right? It's not profit. Non-profit? No, it's not graphic. No. No. Welcome to the world of masks, right? No, it's not graphic. You mean like seeing a dead person in a, no, it's not. No, not at all. So if you decide you need to leave, even to get up and go to the bathroom or something, please step over to your instructor and say, hey, I'm just going to the bathroom, I'll be right back. Or, she's going to ask you, probably take you outside and ask you what's going on, make sure that you're okay. All right, so don't just slip out. Okay, does that feel? Okay, thank you for heads up. Okay, so what we want to first talk about are what are the goals for today? Early recognition of warning signs of somebody thinking about suicide. Bold intervention, not just kind of waiting and seeing, but doing something about it right away, right? Early referral. So we know that as soon as people get treated, when they're having suicide ideation or feelings of depression, the more likely they are to be able to overcome, right? Early professional assessment and treatment. Remember, we were saying that before, just like with CPR, your job is to recognize it and get the person help as soon as you can. That's the point of this. And then to decrease stigma, right? So there is still a lot of stigma attached to people that have mental health issues, who have considered suicide, or people themselves are embarrassed about it, right? And we want to make sure everybody knows that when people have those thoughts and feelings, that it's nothing to be ashamed about, but it is something to get treated for. Right, so we don't want you to feel shame if you're having these feelings, or be ashamed of other people that are having those feelings. We want to do something about it. Their brain imbalances, it's not the person's fault. Does that make sense? So we want to decrease stigma too. And the more that we know about it, the less stigma there is. All righty. So it's not intended to be a form of counseling or treatment. You are not leaving here counselors, right? You're just recognizing the signs. It is intended to offer hope through positive action. And I want you to have the idea that you have hope that you could help somebody who's thinking about suicide, that you will leave here with those skills to be able to do something about it after the end of this training. All righty. So just some helpful statistics. These 2017 seems so long ago, right? These are the most recent statistics that we have for now. So about 129 suicides per day in the US, or one death every 11 minutes due to suicide. That might be a little bit different, but it's not substantially different today, right? The second leading cause of death in the 10 to 34 age range, mostly because people in that age range don't tend to die of other stuff, right?
So it's accidents are the first and then suicide's the second. The highest risk for suicide is in middle age, 45 to 54, primarily white males. And so in 2017, it was the 10th leading cause of death in the US, 11th in California. Guess what? It's not anymore because COVID took over. COVID's now like the 3rd leading cause of death in the US. Yeah.
On suicide during 2020, like 2020.
No, I don't, but I can tell you that in the middle of the pandemic, we did look up statistics for another group and the suicide rate did not go up. Surprisingly, it did not go up. If it went up, it was a little smidge. There are other things that went up, like alcoholism and like drug use and drug deaths and stuff like that, which may be masking some suicides. But things that are considered suicidal deaths didn't really go up that much, at least about halfway through the pandemic. So we'll see when we do this again, what the change will be. That was a big surprise to a lot of people, though. We all expected a lot more suicides. That's a really good question. Thank you. All right. So continued suicide ideation, that's thinking about suicide. Planning and the number of attempts is highest in the 18 to 25 age group, which is why we make a big deal about it on our college campus, because 75% of our students are in that age group, right? And it turns out that you guys do a really good job of helping each other in this instance. We have had many students walk other students to the student health center because they've been concerned about them, right? So this is why we spend time on that here and why we spend time on that with students, not just faculty and staff. Okay, white males, American Indians, and Alaska Natives have the highest suicide rate. LGBTQ plus attempt suicide 5 times the rate of heterosexual individuals, 8.5 times as much if there's family rejection. That's a very significant piece of information there. Very much higher in these rates. And I want to stress that it's not because there's some sort of thing wrong with individuals in this community. It's the acceptance and the problems, it's like the lack of acceptance and the lack of status and the discrimination that causes that, right? It's not that there's something wrong with them. It's the culture around them. So that's a really important thing to know too. 20 veterans die by suicide each day in the US. That hasn't changed much either. It's about 16% of all US suicides. Firearms account for almost 51% of all suicides. It's another piece of it. Yeah.
There are different veterans that have like severe cases of PTSD.
PTSD is a really common part of that. Yeah, it's much higher in people with PTSD and other mental health issues as a result of their service or not, or that their service lowered their threshold or brought it on, like they had the possibility and then their service brought it on. There are a lot of things that happen with veterans that aren't PTSD. Sometimes it has to do with just having a difficulty getting used to a civilian life, or the fact that their warfare specialty doesn't equate to, job skills out in the civilian world. So there are a lot of things that happen with veterans besides PTSD, which I know because I'm married to a veteran he was in the Navy for many, many years. So there are actually classes that they take to try to help become civilians after a long career in the military, which has really been helpful, but not everybody does it, not, all of those things. Great questions. Any other questions about the statistics? Okay. So undiagnosed and untreated depression is the #1 cause for suicide. You should always, if you hear about a suicide, the first thought should be, oh, was that person depressed? Because it's really a common thing. Like the overwhelming majority of suicides are caused by depression. And then expressing hopelessness is the #1 clue for suicide. If somebody is telling you they just have no hope, this is useless, when you hear those kinds of words from people, that's a huge clue. Okay. So if you look, these are brain scans, right? And the brain on the left is of a depressed person, and the brain on the right is from somebody who is not depressed. What are some things that you observe, or what's something you observe about the difference between those two images? Yeah.
A lot less color.
Yeah, like over here, you mean it's a lot less color, yeah. So the orangey yellow means that the brain is active and firing. It's firing, it's operating, it's communicating with all the different parts of itself, right? This one does not seem to be firing very much, right? We can all kind of see that, yeah. So why is that an issue? Well, if you don't have a brain that's firing quite so much, you're probably not thinking very well. You're probably not thinking clearly or making good decisions, right? You're not using all the available real estate in your brain to make a good decision, right? So you can see how, I mean, suicide seems illogical to most of us, but that's because there's not a lot of logic being used. That's kind of the point of this slide, right? We can all kind of see that. So the decision-making process isn't super great in somebody who's suffering from depression. Yeah.
Essentially, hemisphere is firing at all.
You know what? Probably. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe you know the answer to that. I don't know. But one thing is clear, though, actually, good point, because we do know that your brain does need to communicate with other parts of itself, right? And so if you're not doing that, that's problematic. Yeah, that's kind of the way our brains work, is being able to communicate with other parts of it. Did somebody else have it? Yeah.
Well, you where there's so much logic going on in the brain.
Well,
Gives you like, the things that you want from names.
Yeah, like it's not like
Right.
like logic and like problem solving and those kinds of things that a person normally is able to do, like, okay, I don't have enough money in my checkbook to pay my rent. Let's see what I can do about that, blah, blah, blah. But if you have this situation, you're just going to say, this is a hopeless situation. There's nothing I can do about it, right? Do you see what I mean? Like there's logic and problem solving in this brain that's going on that could be posed with the same problem that this brain is, but this brain says there's nothing I can do about it. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, great. That's a very extreme oversimplification of this slide, but just gives you the idea, right? All right. So, oh, shoot. Tell me what you think are some symptoms of depression before I give you the answers. What do you think? Yeah. Lack of hope. A lack of hope, and maybe even expressing a lack of hope.
Loss of interest in activities.
Yeah, what else? So things that you're normally interested in, no more.
Too much sleep, too little sleep.
Yes, changes in sleep patterns, which causes a vicious cycle, because that can also cause depression too. Yeah. Eating habits, yeah. You were gonna say eating habits, yeah.
Sugar.
Yes, like mood swings and that kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely. What else? Yeah.
I'm gonna say drug and alcohol.
Yes, yeah, another vicious cycle. Same with the diet, right? So like if you have, if you're not eating or sleeping right, you're not, and also exercise is another one, like you're normally an exercise person and then you stop exercising, that can bring it on too. And it's a sign of it, but it also causes it. So it's a vicious cycle. Almost all of those things are a vicious cycle. Same with mood swings, frankly. Because if you're moody, people don't want to be around, right? They don't want to have the conversations with you, and that makes you feel lonely. I mean, you can see how all of these things are kind of downward spirals, right? The symptoms cause more of the problem. Excellent, A+. All right, well, let's see. So loss of interest, we talked about that. Heightened emotions or mood swings. Feelings of sadness, we didn't say that, but if somebody feels sad or guilt or shame, we talked about shame earlier. Yeah, so shame is another one of those vicious cycle, spiral downward thing. A lot of times you'll see a lack of energy and it won't, sometimes it can be a lack of sleep. Sometimes they sleep all the time and they still feel sapped. That's a really common one. Changes in sleeping or eating, we said. difficulty concentrating or making decisions. And that's, remember, we saw the brain, that's part of it. You can't, it's hard to make decisions or concentrate. Withdrawing from friends or family, helplessness, hopelessness, thoughts of suicide or death, or wishing to be dead. It's a really common one. Suicide ideation. That's exactly what that is. All right. So then there are also some suicide myths and facts. So the first one, no one can stop a suicide. It is inevitable. No, if you are in crisis and you get the help you need, many may never even have suicidal thoughts again. There are lots of really good treatments for depression, right? Confronting or learning what to do if you have those ideas too. A lot of people do really well with a safety plan, right? But they need help getting that, devising that. Confronting a person about suicide will only make them angry and increase the risk of suicide. No, asking someone directly about suicide intent lowers anxiety, opens up communication, and lowers the risk of self-destruction. And I will just tell you that a lot of people are really fearful that if they ask somebody if they are thinking about suicide, that's going to make them want to have, kill themselves, right? The opposite is the truth. The opposite is the truth. So that's a really key element to what we're learning today, right? Only experts can prevent suicide. Well, if we thought that, would I be here? No. So the truth is suicide prevention is everyone's business and anyone can help, which is why you're here today. All right, people considering suicide keep their plans to themselves. Actually, no. Most people considering suicide communicate their intent sometime during the week preceding the attempt. Do they all? No, but most do. Those who talk about suicide don't do it. No, we just learned that they actually do talk about it or do gestures or something before they kill themselves or try to kill themselves. Once a person decides to complete suicide, there's nothing anyone can do to stop them. No, that's what we're learning about today, that somebody can stop them. And many of us have heard stories of somebody just feeling helpless, hopeless, lonely, friendless, whatever. And then somebody does something nice or says, hey, let's go for a walk or whatever. And that changes everything. I think all of us have heard stories like that. That can be the case. It's not always the case. Sometimes they need a little more than that, but sometimes it's that one person being kind at a really critical time that's made a big difference in somebody's life. So just be aware of that. All right, so warning, clues and warning signs. There are more clues and signs observed, the greater the risk. So again, if it's just they're changing their eating habits, but nothing else is different, it's different from also expressing helplessness or whatever. So the more clues, the worse the situation. Yes.
And the thing said they say like they're gonna kill themselves, but how do you know what people do?
Yeah, so I have to tell you that, so not only do people joke about it, but sometimes they also say it to, I don't know, to get a reaction from you. So this is a story of my son. So my son, when he was in high school, like a freshman in high school, he was a really big skater. And I told him that he needed to wear a helmet when he skated, because there are a lot of head injuries with skating. And he's like, all right. So we got him a helmet that he was willing to wear, blah, blah, blah. I caught him skating without his helmet. So I took his skateboard away for a week. I'm like, sorry, you can't skate. I can't trust you, blah, blah, blah. There have to be consequences. And he said, I'm going to kill myself if I can't skate. So I said, well, that is a problem. So we took him to a psychologist. It was an emergency and he was. So what I did was I said, I believe you that you're planning to kill yourself. I took you seriously and I took you to the psychiatrist who checked you out and made sure that, you got the treatment you needed, or we verified that that wasn't really your plan. And he never said that to us again because he didn't want, plus she was a little odd, the person he saw, but she asked the question, are you planning to kill yourself? And he really wasn't. He was really just mad at us. But how did I know that? So when people say stuff like that to you, don't don't think, oh, they're just joking around. Say, I'm taking that really seriously. Do you really mean that? And they'll tell you, they'll say, no, 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 I'm not, right? But if they are, most of the time they'll say, yeah, I'm feeling pretty down, or yeah, I do feel like that sometimes, right? So that's a great question. And that's a great response to when somebody does that, right? And it wasn't like a vindictive act. It was like, are you really thinking about that? Does that make sense? Does anybody? Okay, great. All right, so these, sometimes it'll be direct verbal cues like my son's, like I'm just gonna kill myself, right? I've decided to kill myself. I wish I were dead. I'm going to commit suicide. I mean, these are very direct. This is not even what I would call a clue. It's like a sledgehammer over your head. I am gonna take care of myself right here. I'm gonna do it. Okay, so if such and such happens, I'll kill myself. We've had students here with so much pressure to do well in school and get into certain programs or whatever. We had a student that was going to kill himself because he got a B on a math test. Many of us are like, I wish I could get a B on a math test, right? But his thing was that he needed to get an A in order to be able to get into medical school. And there was a lot of pressure from his family to get into medical school. And so as a result of that, it was existential for him to get an A in his math class. And what ended up happening was he was walked over to the health center. He saw a mental health provider from our campus and, began to realize that killing yourself over a B in math is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, right? And maybe changing your view, changing your ideas of what's important, what's not important, that kind of thing. That can be really a good outcome of therapy. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right, so sometimes people are indirect. I'm tired of life. I just can't go on. My family would be better off without me. Who might say something like that? Who might say my family would be better off without me?
A sick person.
Yeah, somebody with a chronic illness that needs treatment or care a lot.
I would think a person that's not getting the attention they want or slash need.
Could be.
Parents working.
Could be, yeah, absolutely.
Elderly.
Yeah, that's a really common one with the elderly. Yeah. Who else? Could be, yeah, absolutely. So, and yesterday people came up with people who are drug addicts or who, have drug abuse issues, alcoholism, who have mental health issues. So lots of reasons why people might make that kind of comment. Who cares if I'm dead anyway? I just want out. I won't be around much longer. That's another one that's a really big, oh, well, you won't need to worry about me next week at that party or that whatever. Yeah. Pretty soon you won't have to worry about me. Those kind of hints, those are worth saying, really, what are you thinking about? Why won't I have to worry about? First of all, I'm not worried about you, but why would I not worry about you next week or something like that, right? Okay, behavioral clues, any previous suicide attempts. So although many times treatment will reduce the person's desire ever to commit suicide again, it does put you at a higher risk if you have attempted suicide before, okay? Acquiring a gun or stockpiling pills, really big red flag. Co-occurring depression, moodiness, helplessness, so multiple symptoms all at once. Putting personal affairs in order. So the thing of it is like, if you're at a certain age, like you're my age, we make sure we have our will is in order and all that stuff, right? Because we're more likely to die of natural causes at my age than at your age, right? But if you have a friend who's 18, putting their affairs in order and making sure they have a will, like that would be unusual behavior for somebody who's younger, right? Does that make sense? And then giving away prized possessions is a really biggie at any age, right? So my same son, when he was in middle school, actually had a friend who killed himself, which is another reason why we took his threat seriously, because he had a friend who had killed himself before. But His friend that killed himself the week before he did it was giving away, you guys are too young to know about this, but they had these kind of cool binders called Trapper Keepers, and they had like cartoon characters and heroes and blah, blah, blah on them. They were highly coveted, kind of expensive. And his friend gave away his Trapper Keeper and these cool pens he had. He was just giving all of his stuff away to his friends. Nobody knew, the kids knew about it, but the parents didn't know about it at all. And then right the very next week, he killed himself. Right. So that is a super common giveaway. Right. Hint. Yeah. In any age, like we've heard of people giving away family heirlooms to their friends and things like that. It's just very unusual behavior unless you're thinking about not being around for much longer. Yeah.
Teachers want to wear.
I'm sorry?
The teachers want to wear.
No, that's a really good, everybody's kind of scratching their head and then the kids started saying, oh gosh, he was so happy last week. He gave me his Trapper Keeper. And so like when stuff like that happens at a school, a lot of times there's like a crisis counseling available on campus. And that's when all the kids started saying, oh, he just gave me his pen. I didn't realize, yeah.
I know it's a pretty common thread, isn't it, where you can be very sad, depressed, and hopeless, and then you make a decision and then you're moving through.
Yes. So it's kind of a tricky thing because they're like, you think the person's feeling better. And they are because they've decided to kill themselves. So yeah, that's a tricky business. But it's something to just be aware of. If a very depressed person isn't doing anything to treat the depression and there's not an obvious change in something to bring that good mood on, that's something to be kind of worried about, right? Okay, good. So any questions, comments, concerns about this? All right. So sudden interest or disinterest in religion. That's a common one. Drug or alcohol abuse or relapse after a period of recovery. So sometimes an event or a depression will cause that to come back, like make the person kind of fall off the wagon. But also remember, alcohol especially contributes to depression. It's a depressant, and that causes that kind of negative feedback loop too. Unexplained anger, aggression, or irritability that you mentioned earlier, seeking revenge, talking or writing about death. I'll show them, I'm going to kill myself. That's not an uncommon sentiment. And then engaging in risky behaviors, what might those be? Can you think about some risky behaviors that somebody might participate in when they're feeling suicidal? Yeah.
Stealing.
Yeah, stealing. Like, what's the problem with that? Things can happen to me, or maybe it will. You have to do it yourself. Anything? Yeah.
Reckless driving.
Yeah. What else? Are there risky behaviors?
Unsafe sex.
Yes, absolutely. What else?
Drug abuse.
Drug abuse? Yeah.
I was gonna say drinking.
Yeah, drug, alcohol. Yeah, that's very common, very, very common. Anybody read F. Scott Fitzgerald? That's full of depressive drinking for sure. Okay, so, and then there are things that can kind of trigger feelings of suicide and depression, being fired or suspended from school, a recent unwanted move, loss of any major relationship. So there's a story of a student that was in class. It's been several years now. He was watching a video, nothing too dramatic or, emotion evoking, but he started to cry in the class. And his professor walked into the health center saying, I don't know what's going on with this kid, but he's not a particularly emotional person. And he started crying during this video, and I'm a little worried about him. And so what happened was he went in and started talking to one of our providers and said, I'm just really overwhelmed because my friend just killed himself, and I'm just really upset and sad about it. And I'm feeling really, really very upset about it. And so my colleague said, oh gosh, well, tell me a little bit about it. And then do you have somebody that you talk to? And he had a youth pastor that he talked to. And
you know, she sort of started to get some idea of his support system and all of that stuff. But she said, okay, are you okay? Are you thinking, you thinking about killing yourself? And he said, no, I'm really not thinking about killing myself. But she just didn't like the interaction. Like, she was very worried about him still. Like, she didn't feel like he was forthcoming, right? So what happened was she called his home, which if we're very worried about you, we can call your home and find out, how you ask your family for help. And he had said that his family was helpful. And so she called, and the sister answered the phone. It was back before cell phones, so it was a long time ago. And the sister said, she said, are your parents home? And she's like, no, they're away. And she goes, oh, are you guys thinking about having a party while they're gone? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, well, your brother's really concerned about his friend that killed himself. And she said, what friend? And then she goes, he's not dead. And so what Sharon realized was probably he was talking about himself, and giving a hint that he was thinking about killing himself. So she was able to get, the pastor at the church involved and all these other resources to watch over him and make sure that he was okay. And it actually, that wraparound of social support was really helpful to him. So a happy ending to that story. But just be aware, pulling the string like that and getting a little more information and listening to your gut is a really good idea here. Okay, so, and why I say that the loss of a major relationship is his girlfriend had just broken up with him. They had been together for, 5 years or something, and she had just broken up. And that is a real big trigger for a lot of people, especially males. Okay, death of a spouse, child, or best friend, especially by suicide, which is why we were concerned about our son. And then diagnosis of a serious or terminal illness. So that's what you were saying earlier. Yeah. And then other ones, unexpected loss of freedom or fear of punishment. So that was my son not getting to have a skateboard for a week, right? Anticipated loss of financial security. So you lose your job, you get disinherited, just any number of things like that. Fear of becoming a burden to others, which is kind of the basis of what you were saying earlier with chronic illnesses and things like that. And then loss of a cherished therapist, counselor, or teacher. So there are a lot of people that have a connection to somebody like that in their lives. And when something happens to them, they get distraught, right? Okay, so now we move into the actual nuts and bolts of QPR. So ask a question, save a life. And here we go. So the Q is question. So that's physically asking the question, are you thinking about hurting yourself? Are you thinking about killing yourself? That's the question, right? So here are some tips. If in doubt, don't wait, ask the question. So don't worry about if you think they're joking around or not, just ask the question. If the person is reluctant to answer, be persistent. So my friend Sharon was persistent with that student. She was kind of like, I don't feel good about this, right? Talk to the person alone in a private place. Why would you want to talk to them alone in a private place?
They probably feel comfortable.
A little more comfortable being honest with you without other people overhearing and that kind of thing, right? Yeah. Allow them to talk freely. Give yourself plenty of time. So don't say, oh, you know what, I'm late for class. Are you thinking about killing yourself? I gotta work. No, because there are other activities for you to do after you've asked the question. All right. Have your resources handy. So on in your QPR booklet, there's resources inside and also on your card. So those are handy resources to have. I put them in my phone so I can share a contact if I need to, that kind of thing too. And then remember, how you ask the question is less important than that you do ask it, okay? So there's a less direct approach. If you feel better about this, you can say, have you been really unhappy lately? Have you been very unhappy? You're kind of walking toward it, right? Have you been so very unhappy that you've been thinking about ending your life? For children who may not understand the concept of death and suicide, you can say, do you ever wish you could go to sleep and never wake up? So a good way of saying it for little children. All right. Then there's a more direct approach. You know, when people are hurting and as upset as much as you are, they sometimes wish they were dead. I'm wondering if you're feeling that way too, or are you thinking about killing yourself? And some people even think that saying killing yourself versus committing suicide. Are you thinking about killing yourself as a better and more direct way of saying it too? So, okay. If you can't ask the question, but you're still concerned, then it's really important for you to find help. Here on campus, between the hours of 8 and 5, where's a great place to get that kind of help? The student health center, yeah. We have providers on campus in all of our hours, right? Our work hours, and you can always bring somebody there. We have crisis counseling, not every day, but many days in a week, often, especially during midterms and finals and things like that, right? So we're there for you. And we'll find out more resources later. Okay, how not to ask the suicide question. You're not thinking about killing yourself, are you? You wouldn't do anything stupid, would you? Or suicide's a dumb idea. Surely you're not thinking about suicide. Why are those not awesome ways to ask that question? What do you think? Yeah.
You're making them feel stupid.
Making them feel stupid. Yeah. Good. And what's another, can you think of another reason why that's not a great way to ask that question? Yeah.
You're not really opening up the conversation in a safe space or anything like that.
Yeah. If you're telling them they'd be stupid for thinking about that, are they going to tell you that they're thinking about that? Yeah, they're less likely, right? Because, you're kind of projecting the right answer. You know what I mean? No, I'm not thinking about that. Why would you think I was thinking about that? No. So you want to ask the question as directly as you can, right? Be very clear, make good eye contact. Don't look away or look down or look around or whatever. Just directly ask the question. And we're going to get a little practice with that today so that the words feel okay coming out of your mouth, but you'll want to practice that and really get comfortable with it. All right. The next one is once you get the answer, yes, I'm thinking about killing myself. The next thing is to persuade them to stay alive, right? Oh, let's go back. What if they say no? Oh, no, I'm not. Does that mean it's over? No, because you were concerned. So they may say, oh no, this thing happened or blah, blah, blah. There's still resources to refer them to. If there's a student here at Moore Park College, you can take them to the student health center and say, I still think it's a good idea for you to talk to someone. Or I'm going to show you some other resources in the SAC that you can give them. So it doesn't stop there. But if they do say yes, then we want to persuade them to stay alive. That's what the P stands for. So listen to the problem and give them your full attention, right? Remember, suicide is not the problem, only the solution to a perceived insoluble problem. Remember, we saw that brain that wasn't firing very well. Sometimes people are hit with a problem that they think is insurmountable because they just can't kind of put it together in their brains, right? So somebody not feeling that way can really help them sort it out, right? So that's really helpful. Do not rush to judgment, right? That's one of the things that a depressed person or a suicidal person is kind of thinking about, that people are going to judge them or think that they're dumb or think that they're, not capable of rational thought or whatever it is, or they're going to think less of them. Offer hope in any form. I can help you. Let me take you to this person. Let's make a phone call. Lots of things. If they know that you're their ally, that can be really, really helpful and hopeful. All right. So works best when you do the following. Persistent statements that suicide is not a good solution and suggest that better alternatives can be found. So I have a friend who's a therapist, I mentioned this before, who says suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And that's a really good way of putting it and thinking about it yourself, right? Focus on healthy solutions to problems, not the suicide solution. So taking your friend over to the student health center is a healthy solution to a problem, but not the suicide solution. All right. Accept the reality of the person's pain, but offer alternatives. And how would you do that? By saying, you seem like you're really hurting right now. And they want to be helpful, right? That makes people feel better just knowing that somebody recognizes their pain, right? Show respect, because remember the stigma and the disrespect is part of the problem, okay? And then offer hope in any way. Let me help you. Let me get you to someplace where people can help you, so on and so forth. All right. If they tell you they've had treatment before and it has not worked, try asking, what if this time it does work? Let me tell you that people who've been in therapy have had often many therapists before they land on the one that's really helpful to them, right? It's very common. And sometimes when people try one therapist and it doesn't work, they think they just can't get the help they need. So just be aware of that. If people say that to you, yesterday we had a young woman who was saying, yeah, but what if they can't stop working? What if they this, what if they that? There are lots of solutions to people that need treatment, but can't miss work or whatever, can't miss school. So there are lots of solutions, especially nowadays, right? Okay, and then the R stands for refer. So you're going to get them to the help they need, which isn't you. You're just a little conduit from the question to the help, right? Suicidal people often believe they cannot be helped, so you may have to do more. The best referral involves taking the person directly to someone who can help. So here at school, the Student Health Center, will you go with me to get help? All right. And then the next best is, will you let me help you get help? That could be something like calling the suicide helpline together, right? Those kinds of things can really be helpful. All right. The third best referral is to give information, share that contact for the suicide helpline or the text line or some of those things, right? Here's a brochure, those kinds of things. That can be helpful. It's not as good as physically walking them to the health center or making that call with them. But sometimes that's all you can do. All righty. So the other piece of it we've mentioned it several times, is the commitment to sobriety is important. Alcohol especially, but other drugs, recreational drugs too, can really cause a lot of depression. Actually, even drugs that are prescribed to you can have the side effect of depression. And it's really important when that happens for people to just be aware of that, make sure that their physicians know about it, that kind of thing. But really, alcohol use especially is such a depressant, and it can really cause kind of a downward spiral. Okay, so this is the page I was mentioning before. If you have a cell phone and you want to, you could take a picture of this as to show you all these different resources that are available. So maybe you're not here during our working hours at the Student Health Center, but you have a student that needs help. Or somebody that's a non-student. Plenty of us have parents and grandparents and children and, those kinds of things that need our help. So suicide hotlines, that's great. If you're sitting with a friend who's considering suicide, you can call the suicide hotline and say, my friend sitting right here with me right now is having thoughts of suicide, and I want to make sure they get help. Hand the phone over to your friend, they'll talk to the friend, and then they give the phone back to you and give you some ideas of what to do next. Or, yeah, we need to call 911, or we need to, whatever it is, right? So it's a really great way of helping that person in the moment, right? For veterans, it's the same phone number, press 1. They have a special department helping with veterans, right? This is another great one for members of the LGBTQ plus population, the Trevor Lifeline. They have lots of food resources, not only for suicide prevention, but other services to help LGBTQ individuals. This is a great one, and we give this out to students all the time. This is the crisis text line, 741-741. If you text courage to it, they'll know that you go to Moore Park College. That's the only reason to text courage to it. You could just start giving your message to this number, and a trained volunteer will respond to you and give you some ideas. Sometimes you just can't sleep in the middle of the night because you have a test and you're worried about it, or you had a breakup, or you had, any number of things that could cause you to just feel really anxious or sad or depressed or whatever. And this is a great thing to do. It's text, you don't have to say it out loud. So maybe some of us live with family members that are not okay with mental health services or whatever. This is a great strategy to quietly get some help. So it's good for that reason too. So there are two crisis teams. Well, there's one crisis team in Ventura County. That's the number. They have so many resources for so many different life situations, folks. That's a really great one to call if somebody needs any type of mental health services. There are lots of different programs for different kinds of situations for people. So that's a good one. And then in LA County, it's the Disinterest Foundation, and that's the number for LA County too. Okay, so on this side, lots of national ones, and on this side, local county services. Yeah.
Say I recommend it for thinking of committing suicide, but how would you rate 7 cups if you're just having like stress from night or?
I'd call that stress help. I'd call the crisis helpline for that. In the middle of the night, you're just stressed out and you can't sleep, and the wheels are really going. That's a great service. The crisis text line.
No. It's like an online.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're suggesting something else, and it's called Southern Cross. 7 cups. 7 cups. I've never heard of it before. I'm gonna just write it down. So
You don't speak to like a person, you speak to other people.
Interesting. Let me write that down so I can look into it a little bit. 7 cups. That's cool. Have you experienced it before and you feel like it was nice?
You're not.
Got it. You're just listening. I don't know what their training, I don't know what the training is about that, like how they make a referral if that's the situation.
Someone in the told me that they're patches for like either a hotline or I have to use for them.
So you refer.
Like,
yeah, so it's just like that. So it's like another sense. So in a sense, it's like this one. It's like this one, but it's talking instead of texting.
no, it's message.
Oh, it is messaging. Oh, cool. Yeah. So it's the same. So it's similar. If you know somebody's suicidal though, I would skip this and I would just go to like I would go probably to either suicide hotline or the crisis teams. If you know somebody's I would skip that and just go to, yeah. Thank you for that. I'll have to check into it. Okay. So here's another biggie. This is like, CPR too, where if it's a dangerous situation, like the person is armed, they have weapons, they have, whatever, it's in a dangerous place, just call 911. If the person is passed out, call 911. Like if you see like the pills and the puddle of booze or like the beer cans all over the place and they're passed out, that's a 911. Okay, so I don't want you to think that you have to be brave and do that. Okay, so almost all efforts to persuade someone to live instead of attempt suicide will be met with agreement and relief. Don't hesitate to get involved and take the lead. Okay, so for effective QPR, say, I want you to live, I'm on your side, we'll get through this, get others involved. Remember asking the pastors or asking them who's supportive in their health, in their life. That's really important. Join the team and follow up. That's really good. All right, so we're gonna quickly practice this. I want everybody to get into dyads. You have to act quickly because our class is almost over. You're gonna get into two. I guess we're.
Okay, so. Okay. You're gonna have either, one of you is either gonna be the gatekeeper. And the other person is gonna be the troubled individual. And you're gonna have less than 5 minutes. You're gonna have just a few minutes to go through the scenario. And ask the question, ask the suicide question, okay? Are you guys together? Yeah.